Hello there, Seraph17 once again. This is my Batman Arkham Origins Cold Heart DLC No Damage. This very first fight here is one of the hardest fights in the game to get the score for, because you intentionally have to hit these guys more than you want to. If you kill these dudes too quickly without countering some attacks, you won't build enough of a multiplier to manage to get the highest rank on the combat here. Arkham Origins has a really cool scoring system, and the intention of this walkthrough is to get the Apex Predator grade for every fight. But I failed to do that for several reasons, so there's the first one anyhow. And that one is, believe it or not, the fight that took me the most resets in this entire run. You might be thinking, how the hell does that work? And I'm thinking the same, but just know that it's very confusing and it never makes any more sense. And if you're wondering why weird things are happening, I'm playing this game on 240 FPS, and it has a weird conflict with the AI patterns and with the AI's behaviour when it comes to physics. And I can't even begin to tell you how much of an issue it becomes when it comes to the Predator rooms. And it is pretty funny though, it's going to be quite a leitmotif every time it happens. But if you've never seen my Batman series, or the most recent Batman series, this is going to be a supercut of all the encounters, with all the puzzle solving and the downtime completely stripped out and removed. And it's an interesting project, this. I never covered the DLC for Arkham Origins because I didn't really like the game too much, and I came back to it here with the intentions of doing the same thing I did with Asylum, which is hard and no upgrades. But in this, you start with all the upgrades, and it didn't even give me a difficulty at the start either. And when I did a little bit of research, it seems to favour the difficulty that you put the game on when you played Origins. It uses the same save file, apparently. I don't know if this is 100% correct. It's what I was able to pick up on. And I didn't have a save file for this, so this might just be basic, normal difficulty. I don't really know. But it doesn't matter too much. It's just meant to be a side project to keep on the channel to hopefully entertain you with a bit more Batman and cover something that I'd not seen before. Arkham Origins is a really interesting game to me because it's the Arkham game I like the least, and it's the Arkham game that gave me the most issues when it came to how the mechanics work. But it's been long enough now that I've forgotten what my gripes with the game were. And one of the things that happens, guys, with your memory, as you know from experience, is there's this wonderful romanticism about the things you don't like over time where they start to dull, they start to soften, and there comes a point where you almost start second-guessing yourself and thinking, well, maybe it was better than I thought it was, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought it was at the time, maybe it was environmental, maybe it was me, maybe I was in a bad mood. You start to come up with all these wonderful apologetics and gymnastics of the brain to question whether or not the game received the right verdict and judgment from you. And when I came back to this DLC, I immediately stumbled into all of the issues that I originally had with the game. But I didn't want this walkthrough to be about those issues. I wanted it to just be some collective enjoyment of Arkham, the games themselves, and the excitement of the new Arkham game that's coming, which is going to be the is it Gotham Knights, I think it's called? Which is technically like a spiritual successor to the Arkham series. And it's going to be cooperative as well, which could be really cool. But one of the tricky parts about this project was, of course, Batman is a game about investigating and flying around the hub world. It's also a game about these puzzle sections with this stealth moment, which you're watching right now. And because there's been quite a lot of upgrades in mechanics and in the challenges and demands on the player, from Asylum to Origins, there's a lot of stuff in this game I had forgotten. And I got thrown into this particular Predator mission here, and I completely forgot that the enemies could wake each other up. So you could knock them down and then they'll go and wake them up and then they're back again, so it's as if you've not done anything. I forgot what all the gadgets did. I'd pretty much forgotten everything. And I got to this particular encounter and I got really close to doing it, and then I failed at the end, and then you have to do the full room again because they are one and done kind of scenario. And it put me into this situation of, I really don't want to do these Predator moments. And some of the Predator moments in this DLC are quite tricky too, which is kind of funny, compounding on the fact that all I wanted to do was fight. So when you watch the gameplay for these sequences here, it's going to get you through, guys. I'm going to do it no damage. That's the point of the playthrough. But it's not going to be to the same level as it was when it comes to the fighting. Because truth be told, coming back to this game and having to navigate the open world, I got such a massive wave of fatigue. It was really unexpected too. And I mentioned earlier on at the start there where my intention was to make sure that all the fights had flawless free flow combat and that I got the apex rank on every one of them, which is what I really wanted to do. And then I had to fly across the city to get back to the fight that I failed. And then the reason I failed it was one of the reasons that we've talked about, where Arkham Origins as combat and mechanics, they conflict a little bit in certain areas and frustrating things can happen. So I was flying across the city to get hit by something that was nonsense and I did not tell Batman to do, which this was something that Batman always did, but it's kind of exasperated when you have all these additional systems on top of it. So it got to the point where whenever I got to an open world sequence, if I had to fly for a solid minute to get to where the fight was, and if I fucked it up, I just continued, because I had no instance in my heart to want to fly across the city again. And we're talking the ultimate first world problem here, guys, but I preferred Batman when it was a linear sequence and it had curated checkpoints and it was, here's an engagement, here's a checkpoint, do it, then it's finished. Repeat, 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 bit of story, repeat, repeat, credits, you know. That to me is the framework I'm looking for, and that's the framework that I got in Asylum, which is my favourite. And I don't know if it's just the current landscape of video games or the fact that I'm a bit older or something's changed somewhere, but I don't have the tolerance that I once had to suffer things I don't like anymore. It's a very interesting thing. You know, I used to watch movies that were garbage and just sit through them and suffer and tick them off because the idea of turning it off was something that I would have never done. Nowadays, if I don't like a movie in the first 5 minutes, it's gone and done and I'm already watching something else. And it's kind of the same with games. I look back on some of the things I covered for YouTube that I fucking hated. I hated it, but it was new, and I wanted to grow on YouTube. I wanted to try and blow up, and I covered everything I could. And I had such a fervour and self-belief that I just kind of got on with it and put that professional cap on and did the work. Whereas now, like, there are titles right now that are essentially the closest thing to AAA. Must-play titles that are coming out in a relatively quiet year after something like Elden Ring. Oh, by the way, guys, did you see that? I need to talk about this quickly. Look at my HP. Do you see my body armor, how it's lower than my bullet armor? I technically took damage then. So unfortunately this game has 2 instances where Batman is frozen, and in order to break the freeze you have to mash the buttons, and as you're mashing the buttons you are taking tick damage. And I don't know if you can use a turbo controller to press the button 45 million times in half a frame and get out of it without being damaged, but just then, technically I was injured in a cutscene. And it's going to happen twice. I'm not a big fan of that design. I think it's fucking stupid. It really irritates me, but I want to point it out just in case people go, hang on a second, dude, it looks like you've been injured. And I was. It's just the reality of the game. The game hurt me in a cutscene. As I was saying anyhow, though, this is quite a long fight, this one too. And it has a new enemy in it, which is these characters with the ice guns. So take those guys out first, or you can get into some trouble. But now, when I don't like these new games that I should be playing, I feel fine in skipping them and not covering them, because I gave YouTube a long time and I gave it my all, you know. So even if I were to have that same attitude and do that same work and put that up there, it probably wouldn't come to anything. And I value my time a little bit more now and the frustration that it would cause me personally. So it's not something that I do anymore, really. And instead, I do projects like this. Instead of doing the thing that everybody's doing and trying to jump on the bandwagon, or at least the new bandwagon, and I don't say that negatively. If you're playing the YouTube game, more power to you. It's a very difficult game, and I respect it. I especially respect it if you can hustle and get yourself ahead. But I've kind of set myself now to covering things I want to play, that I'm passionate about playing. And then hopefully that's the stuff that, if you're watching right now, that you'll enjoy, because that's the stuff that I enjoy. And I did it the other way for a long time, and change and evolution and modulation is always a good thing. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's not successful, you know, it can give you a fresh perspective. And everything I've covered this year has been something I really wanted to, and it's felt really good. So I hope if you are listening and you are appreciating that it's resonating, because it's resonating with me. And right here we have another Predator sequence. And the Predator sequences in this game are very elaborate. There's lots of enemies, there's lots of like dynamic features and movement, and they give you so many good tools that you can use to get rid of people. But it's very easy for the enemies to know where you are when you use them. So you've got to be really careful here. And we're still at that time on games where when you get seen by the enemies in the Arkham games, they shoot you really quick. They don't give you any kind of leeway. You shouldn't have been seen. They just hurt you immediately. And it's really good for knowing that you're taking damage, so it's easy to reset. But for instance, on a section like this, if you don't get a favourable checkpoint in the city, you have to fly to this location repeatedly. And it's super tedious, in my opinion. It definitely makes me not hungry to go near the more sandbox-driven Arkham games to recover them, because I get no enjoyment in the open world anymore. My patience for non-linear games is next to zero. But I love the wireframe on this, especially with the aliasing settings. I'm one of those people that quite likes the look of anti-aliasing when it's not in complete effect. I don't mind the stutter stepping. It reminds me of my childhood, it reminds me of where games came from, and there's definitely a little bit of the romantic in me that resonates with that. Like, look how many dudes there is here, there's so many guys. So much to be done. So little time, right? But there's a couple of things... Oh, here we go. This is interesting. I don't know if that's physics or Batman just being an idiot. Couldn't walk across that bit. But there's a couple of things to know about Arkham Origins with me, guys, especially when it comes to the combat. I do not like some of the moves that they added to this particular game. The one that's the big one is there's a cape stun in this where... What happened then? Did you see that? That guy just disappeared. This is so weird, dude. Very scary when stuff like that's happening. But there's a move where you press 2 buttons when you have a combo, and Batman jumps into the air and he slams the ground, and it causes this tornado. It causes this massive vortex of bats and of like stun effect, and everybody in it is kind of flailing and incapacitated for a little while. And it completely trivializes the combat if you use it. And you'll notice I used it in the previous fight right on the final enemy for the diversity bonus on the free flow. That's the only time you're going to see me do it, guys. I'm never going to use that move actively to buy myself breathing room in crowded fights, even though it's very smart to do that. And it's purely because I believe it's too strong. And because it's too strong, I don't want to use it. It's not that I don't know it exists. It's not that I don't think it's, you know, very, very strong. It's that it's too strong for me and I don't find it fun. Everything else I'm going to pretty much use, but you won't see me use that, and you won't see me use the multiple ground takedown too much. Because you can use that bat stun, I think, to knock people down, and then afterwards, if you've built up enough combo, you can then immediately knock out like 3 to 4 people, and those two moves combined can clear every encounter in the game quite effortlessly. And I just want to add that there's nothing wrong with using those moves. Those moves exist to be used. It's just a personal choice that I'm abstaining from them. And a lot of the other moves, if you ever not see me doing something, it's probably because I've forgotten the buttons for it. And I've not played Arkham since Arkham Knight, really. And then when I came back to do Arkham Asylum as a bit of a passion project for the channel, when I did no upgrades, I didn't have any moves. So when it came to doing this, I had everything. And of course, this game is the 3rd game in the series. It's got lots of iterations. It's got all kinds of augmentations. So you can do a lot of crazy things. And it's really, really cool. There's a lot of fun things to be had. As I knock these guys down and then we do some ground takedowns. But they're just fun games, you know. Really fun games. This game also has the shock gloves in it as well, which are another thing that you won't see me using because I just don't agree with it, really. So as you build your combo, which any good Arkham player is going to be able to build the combo effortlessly because it's literally the game, you will get to a point where it says, boom, activate shock gloves. And when you do that, you become even more capable than you already are. And as much as I think it's cool cosmetically, and I like the idea of being able to become more powerful, I don't really see the need or the point in this mechanic because the game is already so capable. You know, you are Batman, for God's sake. You are a typhoon in a cape. you just run through these dudes and there's nothing they can do. So giving us this access to something that's even stronger, it just feels like, you know, using a cannon to solve a situation that needed a derringer. And this might be just 100% the way my brain works, but to me it's just a bit too much. I don't get it. I like it, but it's not for me, you know. It's that weird kind of cognitive dissonance. They look cool and I love what they are, but in this game, I feel like they're kind of just overkill and a missed opportunity for something a bit more meaningful. What did you think about the electric gloves, guys? Did you like them? Did you think they were sick? Do you use them all the time, or are you a bit like me where you see them as kind of needless? And I can't remember if they were in the base game now. I think they were. Or it might have been something exclusive to this DLC. But that just goes to show how little I know about Arkham Origins in general. Look how cool that shadow looks. That shadow looks really nice. But there we go. 50 max combo. That's A. And S rank, sorry. I nearly said A then, bloody hell. And these fights here, these are all street fights. So what happens here, guys, is you'll do 5 street fights in a row, and then you'll get to the area that leads inside where the mission is. You'll fuck up that fight, and then when you load the checkpoint, it's before you did all 5 of the street fights. So this part is just miserable. And what ends up happening is if you do make a mistake on these fights, you're just going to fuck off and fly past them all, because why would you do them all again? It's really weird like that. And there's one fight later on where I end up flying too far and aggroing some passive enemies, fighting them, and then when I come back to the fight I'm supposed to do, it's as if the fight still started, so I never stood a chance of getting the perfect rank because I'm being ranked on a fight I didn't want. And there's all kinds of problems like that. It's really frustrating. But be very careful of this fight here. These enemies, these dudes in masks, I don't know who these guys are, but if Mr. Freeze had hired these guys, this entire DLC would have been way more difficult. I don't know what they're smoking, I don't know where they've been training, I don't know what they're rocking, but these guys hurt me more than almost any group of enemies I fought. For some reason, they just beat me up for the first, like, 3 attempts. And then I got this clip here where I just whoop them all and they look easy. But they just, I don't even know what it was, guys. It was like anomalous AI or just super tricky RNG. These activist Riot guys kicked my ass. It's kind of cool, actually, because I just didn't expect it. And I dropped down into that fight thinking I was just going to run through them. And boom, I got hit. I came down again. Boom, I got hit. I was like, what's going on here? These guys are crazy. And then it just turned out, I think I'd got like weird aggressive AI. And then we come to this one, which is another one of these freeze fellows. Who, the thing I love most about this freeze guy is he's essentially a free beatdown. But do not, and I repeat, do not give him chance to use that gun. His gun is bad news. I love the beatdown so much. You've got to be careful with it in this game, though. Some of the detection that they changed. If you come out of a beatdown using the wrong move, it just drops your combo. It's super frustrating. And I was having an interesting conversation the other day about Arkham as a series. And it made me think of the Gotham Knights trailer. So this is the fight I mentioned, by the way, guys. You see how there's that person there that's on the ground? That person is on the ground because he chased me into the other corner where the road is. And I was fighting a bunch of dudes. And I didn't want to kill him because he was part of this fight. And then I came all the way back here, started this fight, got hit, killed him. The checkpoint was all the way at the start, all the way back on the bloody building where I came out of. I flew across the city for 45 seconds to get here, and he was still on the ground for some reason, and I have absolutely no idea why. So, you're not going to see an S rank for this, I don't think. Oh no, it looks like you will. Huh. So I managed to get lucky there, but that was all kinds of fucking screwy, and I don't know what was going on. And that right there was a capture error, so apologies again. And this is another one of those weird fights here, guys. Right there, they grade you for that encounter. And because I did a takedown instead of an actual combo, I probably got a shitty rank. And then this is the same here. So there's a fight in this initial room, you then pull off a vent, go through the vent, and there's a fight in the other room. And it seems like these fights are either graded together or they both affect each other. Because if you skip this fight and go in the vent and do the other one, you'll get a terrible grade because you didn't do this one. So you have to do both of them. Which I don't really understand. And again, this is one of those encounters where it's really easy to get a bad rank because you kill them too quick. Any fight in this DLC where there's 2 or 3 enemies is way more difficult than rooms full of 80 dudes, because you do not have the diversity to get the points you need. And we did 30, 35, 10 with perfect free flow, and that was Apex Vigilante. And then we come to this where we go through the vent, and this is another one here. So down there is the dude who... Does you see it just then? You see on the screen how it says A rank? That's because I skipped that previous room, guys, and it grades you for doing it. And it grades you really badly. But I came in here on this footage, and I do this, and it gives me an S. So what I ended up doing in the edit is I trimmed them both together so they were both individually S ranked. And that's essentially what this is meant to be. Anybody who's watching this who thinks this is meant to be S rank on every fight in one attempt, no resets, not segmented, that's not what this is. I do not want people to get the wrong idea here, guys. This is a fun project. It's meant to be enjoyable, and I wanted to make it a bit challenging and have some, have some fun with it. Doing everything on one checkpoint on one attempt is not fun for me. If you want that, I've got a friend called Godfather Dictator, and he's the master at that stuff. So go watch him. Go watch him play Ninja Gaiden, single segment, no damage, and then wonder why we were ever born, because he's done something so impressive and nobody knows it even exists. But this room here is really, really difficult. You get instantly sniped by these guys, and he has all kinds of armor on him. That one particular dude is armored to the gills, but if you freeze him, you can take him down in the ice, and that's what you want to do. And the gimmick here is there are these gargoyles around the room that you can use to make this a bit easier. But what I wanted to do on this particular one is I wanted to see if I could do this room without doing the gargoyles. So I wanted to use that line launcher platform creator technique. And it turns out it's really good. And then later on I thought, fuck this noise, I'll probably use the gargoyles, but I did a couple of the Predator rooms trying not to sit on the gargoyles to see what would happen. And it turns out it's actually kind of tough. The Mr. Freeze fight at the end of this DLC, if you don't use the gargoyles, it is a pain in the arse. I tried for about an hour to try to do it without using the gargoyles, and then I thought, no, I'm not doing it. And one of the reasons why they're so useful as a utility for Batman is that when you jump between multiple gargoyles, I think it's 3, the enemies lose any idea of where you are. So they can see you perfectly, know you're there. If you jump to 2 other gargoyles or 3 other gargoyles, they'll automatically forget they saw you and they saw where you were going, and you will be invisible again. And having that kind of advantage in something like this is second to none. You need it. It's really, really, really useful. But again, this is a Predator sequence. There's quite a few in this, and I had zero interest in them. And I'll tell you right now, guys, if there was an option in this game to pause it and press a button to skip this room, I would have done it. And it's so funny, isn't it? When I first played the Arkham games and when I first covered them on YouTube, I enjoyed Arkham as a package. I enjoyed the traversal, I enjoyed the combat, I enjoyed the stealth and the Predator rooms. I enjoyed it all. 10 years later, after I've done it several times in several versions and whatnot, I come back to it and I get to these rooms and I just kind of go, another one of these. And it's so funny too, because this is not bad gameplay, you know? It's fun, it's cool, but my brain and my mind and where I was when I was recording this was the opposite of what I wanted. I just wanted to get in there and beat up some goons. And I'm really interested to see what that Gotham Knights is going to be like. I touched on it a moment ago, but I got interrupted as I often do in these. So I don't know if you saw the footage for Gotham Knights. It doesn't look great. And I say that with love. I say that with trepidatious love and the heart that knows I'm going to buy it anyway. But it did not impress when I saw it, and I'm curious what you guys thought. And I want to preface this by saying I think the first time they showed it, it didn't look very good either. So the first time they showed it, it had Batgirl on the motorcycle driving through Gotham, and she was going to stop, I think it was Mr. Freeze or something, and it was kind of showing you the idea and the concept of the game in a vertical slice. And visually it looked quite impressive. It looked like they were, really, really pushing what they were trying to do. It looked like it was running bad though, which is one of the big problems with these kind of split generation games when they develop, where they're developing this game so that it can work on a base Xbox One. And the only thing that works on a base Xbox One is like a game of frustration without that clicky thing in the middle. So you've just got a bunch of dice that you raw dog and you move around trying to get home. And that's not great, because it's, let's face it, the Xbox One is a fucking colossal failure. They released several versions afterwards that were a lot better, but that base version, dude, it just makes everything look ugly, because it doesn't have the horsepower to keep up, and all the other machines are just way better than it. And when you are anchored to that system, and you're also designing for PS5, you're going to get such a bastardized visual presentation, because you have to make all of these shortcuts to make it work on something that's essentially several pieces of fruit tied together. And I don't really understand why they didn't just drop old gen. And I appreciate that the installer base for those consoles is way bigger than the new ones. I appreciate that they want to make money back, they want to make a return, and the whole idea of that is, you know, you've got to spread your bases pretty wide, spread yourself quite thin, and hopefully get a good return. But it seemed like a bad choice for that. So the gameplay continues, and it showed standard, you know, Arkham things. And then they talk about Mr. Freeze, and they talk about how you can go and fight Mr. Freeze early if you want to, but he'll be several levels higher than you, which means you won't do much damage to him and he'll do tons of damage to you. And they introduce this idea of the sandbox now has this RPG level system, this level scaling, and that makes me think of God of War. Because in the most recent God of War, if you weren't a high enough level to fight enemies, you got to a position where nothing really worked on them, and it made it really unfun to play unless you came back with better gear and more levels. And as a player that likes to do things without leveling up and without using the best gear and stuff, when I come up to an enemy that doesn't flinch because I don't have a high enough level weapon to hit it with to make it flinch, right then you've completely lost me and I don't want to play your game. And that's what I saw in the Gotham reveal. I saw the capacity to go up against a boss that's 10 levels higher than you, and it's like doing a Nightfall on Destiny 2 when you don't have the right amount of light, so you just do no damage and get insta-killed by everything. And I don't understand who that's for. I just don't understand the game where they can allow you to so willfully be garbage against something so capable, when the previous games did it perfectly. Like, Batman is really capable as a character at the very beginning of the game, and then you upgrade him and he gets more capable, and the more you play, the better you get, and you become a more capable player, he becomes a more capable vehicle. And it's this wonderful union of he gets better, you get better. But this new game, you could be a trash player the whole game and just level your gear and get super light World of Warcraft gear, so your gear carries you through the whole game. And this is not the first rodeo, you know, this is not the first Batman game, the first Arkham game. We've had this before, we understand how it works. So for them to just kind of throw away what has worked so well, this very skill-dependent system, and let's face it guys, Arkham is not that hard of a game mechanically, but it still has a learning curve, it still has a skill ceiling, and the difference between a good player and a bad player are quite obvious. How many times do you watch people play these games and they're not going for counter hits because they're not tapping the button at the right time, instead they're just mashing it? How many times do you see people that are breaking their combo because they don't understand how the free flow works? How many times do you see people that don't use any gadgets, you know, that don't use any takedowns, that don't use any moves, they just jump over people repeatedly? This happens a ton because there's more to these games than meets the eye. And that new one seems to me like it's reducing all of the things that makes the systems feel satisfying to somebody like me. It seems like it's been designed around the type of player that every time they get souls in Dark Souls, they immediately go to the bonfire and try to level up instead of thinking, maybe I don't need that, maybe I can improve as a player. And, whoa, did you see that, by the way? Watch the rank here. Oh no, it's not this one. This is incorrect, I think. Yeah, we're okay. There's a fight I do in that room, guys, where I get judged off of something before a cutscene, and it says that I did B rank, and I had a combo of 3 or something shit, when my combo was in the 80s, and I get completely robbed. So keep your eye out for that fight, that was kind of funny. But when I first saw that trailer, I was worried about the leveling, because it sounds like you're going to have to do the game in a certain order, and if you don't, you're going to get punished for it, and it's going to be really boring. Because let's face it, guys, can I beat Mr. Freeze at level 1 when he's level 50? Yes, I can, because I am patient enough, and I am willing to put in the time. The problem is, do I want to spend 40 minutes beating up a boring boss that's not even worth 3 minutes of my life? That's the true question, isn't it? Because let's face it, there's people out there that have done ridiculous things. People have leveled up to max level on Destiny Island on Kingdom Hearts. Is it hard to do? Absolutely not. Is it hard to have that kind of dedication to something so fucking stupid? Absolutely yes. It takes a very meticulous type of brain. Ooh, And right there, guys, is the first instance of me fucking a fight up. So, I need to talk about this. The scoring system in this game takes a while to populate after you've done an encounter. And just then, I do an encounter, I don't get the rank, it gives me an A rank. I press pause to retry the fight, and it's checkpointed. So I physically cannot retry the fight because it's behind me now. And the only way to do that fight again, guys, would be to play the entire DLC back up to that encounter. And I was not having the best time recording this compared to Arkham Asylum because the open world was really tilting me. And it's because of fights like this. Spoiler alert, I think this is another fight where I don't do flawless free flow because once again, every time I fucked it up I had to fly back to this area and I didn't want to do it. And I didn't really want to record this because I didn't want to open that can of worms of Arkham Origins because I knew I was going to get frustrated with it. But I'm glad I did because I'd never played this content before and I do think it was pretty fun for a DLC. Especially if you look at the DLCs that we get. There it was, right there. See that? The guy frozen over there is in that frost for 900 years. And that pause just then was me wanting to restart and then just kind of going, fuck it. I've already messed up. It's already anchored me into this. The playthrough is not going the way I want it to, but we'll just keep on moving. And right now we've got the new suit too. And coming up here is one of those martial arts guys that I'd completely forgot about. So this guy here is a wizard. He really likes to counter your counters, and then you have to counter that, and then you get into these weird and awkward moments where if you forgot, like I have, what he does and how to hurt him, you kind of stare at him for a bit, and then, oh yeah, you press that button, and then you beat him up. But I had to Google how to hurt this guy, because I'd forgot. Which I thought was really funny. And I didn't Google it on this fight, I Googled it after this, because I was annoyed, to say the least, that this guy had embarrassed me so much, basically. But if you saw just then, you can do the bat stun, where you do BAA and you jump up them and come down. You can do that, that will hurt them and knock them down. And then from there you can probably do something from that. And I think he might be like the universal ones where you can get behind him, and then you can do what you want to him if you're behind him. But I use the gadgets. Like, the gadgets are so strong. The bat claw, the stun, the beatdown, the get behind him. And right there, he counters when I'm behind him, so that tells you that you can't just get behind him. That's good to know. But I thought as well, I thought I could Google that enemy's name and I'd immediately come up with a page that told me exactly how to kill him. Instead, I got like 5 pages of his fucking Facebook account and no strategy on how to fight him. It was mad annoying. I had to watch my own walkthrough to remember what his gimmick was. Which I just think is meta in such a stupid way, but completely appropriate for what the internet is. You can find pictures of like Manus's cock ring, but you can't find a single shred of evidence about how to do certain things that you actually want. It's so perfect, isn't it? But this fight here is kind of hard. So this is a Predator sequence where there's a bunch of guys walking around a rooftop, and you have to fly to it again, which is kind of annoying. But the cool thing about this is it's only about 5 guys, but it's a really clever position. They've put them in such a way with such a pattern on their patrol that it makes it legitimately tricky to do this. And I had a really, really good time figuring out this path. This was one of the more fun moments in this whole walkthrough when it comes to Predator. Figuring out that, and the reason why it was so fun is because it was short. I think that's what Arkham Origin and some of the future Arkham games kind of got wrong. When it comes to the Predator sequences, nobody wants to do a room full of 25 guys. Nobody wants to stealth and like situationally kill 25 dudes on one checkpoint. It just feels exhausting. Sometimes less is more, you know. We understand you have the power. We understand this is the 3rd game in the series, so you know the player's going to be skilled at this point and they're going to be demanding of the challenge to be a little bit higher. But do you really want to stealth 20 guys? Give me a really clean, really tight, really well designed 5 dudes in a room and I'll have a lot of fun with it. But if it's like fucking 10 dudes, I just want to go to sleep. But I had some trouble recording this one as well, because this was another one where you had to fly across the city to get back to it. And the problem here is, you had to do the fight before the shutter to get it as well. And I got stuck on a box in here during my combo and it ruined it. But then what ended up happening, as I repeated it, I got a checkpoint way closer to this area. So if you're trying to do this, guys, and you're resetting and you're getting frustrated with the flybacks, if you're patient enough and you fuck up enough like I did, you will get a checkpoint near this garage. But if you don't, heaven help you, because I was getting really bad, really bad with it. I don't know what it is. I think it's because of PC gaming. PC gaming has afforded me so much flexibility and luxury. I dropped my combo there, didn't I? But luckily it was at the end. Does that count? Because there was nobody to grapple. It did count, thank goodness. Perfect free flow. I was worried then for a second. I got a little bit too creative and ended up getting my ass clapped for it. But there's an interesting story coming up here, where there's a sequence where you go up, you climb up onto that balcony, and you go into a room and there's like 2 dudes. I think it might be after this fight. And what happened is, I did this fight perfectly. I went up, and I fucked up the fight with the 2 people in the corridor. So I restarted it, and it put me in this room. But because there's a checkpoint in this room of a cutscene of somebody opening a door, because that cutscene never triggered because the person who triggered it was dead, I was soft-locked in this room, and I couldn't go anywhere. And in order to fix it, I had to do a weird glide into a wall where Batman climbs a wall he shouldn't climb, and I essentially sequence broke my way out of the room. And I know that this is a problem other people have had, because when I looked online, I noticed other people were stuck there too. So if you have problems getting stuck like I'm about to get stuck, there is a way to do it, guys. You just have to glide towards the balcony you need to get on a certain angle, and you will climb up to it and do like a super lunge. But I was about to cancel this project and delete all the raw assets. I was just going to get rid of it completely. I was in a bad mood, I was frustrated by all the flying back through the open world, and I was about to cull the entire thing. And this is where I get fucked as well with the combo. Watch this. 82 combo that was. Watch what it says here. So, high threat. There you go. 5 max combo. See that? B rank! B rank, dude! And I think this is it. I think this is the fight that got me fucked. So, be very careful retrying a fight at the top of the balcony, essentially. There's a fight at the top of the balcony in a corridor with like 1 or 2 guys. Do not retry that fight unless you want to become a speedrunner part-time. Oh wow, there's a Venom user there. Is that who that is? The guy with the thing on his back? He's a Venom user? I didn't even notice that. And there you go, we get the S rank. So we got a couple of guys knocking us in here. It's another one of those Predator sequences in a room we've already been in. But do you see what I mean? 8 people. 8 people's a bit too many, I think. Especially when they can wake each other up and shit. Like, this is... I don't know. How do you feel, guys? Maybe this is just my exhaustion with the Predator sequences, because I've come back to the game and I really didn't want to do them. How do you feel about 8 people? Do you think it's a decent number? Do you think it's about the limit of how many people it should be to be demanding? Because it's obviously, it's a DLC to a game you've already beat. They're going to escalate. They're going to make it one step harder than the previous thing, right? But I just think that... I think it's too much. I would rather have 4 to 5 people that were all way more intelligent, way more deadly, and had way more tricky things to do to them, than having 8 jobbers that you can essentially body bait into a mass gang pile of... like a common grave, you know? But again, I'm going to try not to use the gargoyles, just to make it a bit more interesting. And I'm just going to do separation and striking. Just isolate them, take them down, and be careful of wonky detection. Look at this fucking stupid game. And also be careful of the knockout smash. It is quicker, but it does make noise. And if you want to see something really stupid, I did a knockout smash challenge on my Arkham City walkthrough many years ago, and the people in the comments were very mad at me for that one, which I thought was quite funny. So it just goes to show, guys, sometimes you'll play a game in such a way where your audience will get rather angry with you. Which I'm pretty familiar with. But we've got a couple guys left. You can use the icicles. That's kind of an interesting addition that I've not spoken about. As you can tell, this is very winter themed, this one. It's very icy themed. I don't really understand reusing Mr. Freeze. I feel like Rocksteady did Mr. Freeze in such a unique way. If I was going to make a Batman game, I wouldn't have done Mr. Freeze because they did him so well. Like, you've got to give him some time before you go back in there, haven't you? You can't just be going in there and doing Mr. Freeze again. And they almost ripped him off to a T, only they put him in a room that's nowhere near as creative, and they turned it shit because they added dudes. So it's like a combination of everything that wouldn't make Mr. Freeze more interesting, but everything that makes him more tedious. And I think that's funny too, because if you watch my Arkham Asylum walkthrough, you'll notice that I compliment this game on its boss fights. I compliment Origins and say it has some of the best boss fights in the series, right? This DLC has probably the worst boss fight in the series. I can't even begin to tell you how much I fucking dislike it. And it's just because it's boring. That's it. You don't fight. You have to kite a bunch of jobbers. And Mr. Freeze is an arsehole. And he's omniscient. So you'll go up to a machine to start charging it to do the mission objective, which is messing about with 3 fucking routers so that you can get the Wi-Fi password back. And then before you know it, he knows exactly where you are and comes and tries to tickle you with his laser. So it just becomes this weird RNG fest of maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't. And at first I was trying to come up with a really cool strategy because I thought that there was something really cool to be done. And then in the end I ended up going with the strategy that I had going in with, which was a decent amount of time ago. I watched an AGDQ and they covered this DLC on it. And I remember that there was a freeze fight in it. And I thought, wow, that's kind of crazy, right? They did freeze again, because I never played this back in the day. And I never forget that guy said that there was a consistent start to that fight and a quick kill on Mr. Freeze. And the bit I remembered was at the start, the guy jumps around and hits all the generators in an order, and for some reason, it just works flawlessly. So I went into the final boss thinking, wow, this is going to be easy, right? I'll just hit these generators in a set order like that speedrunner did, and it's going to be consistent, and it's going to be super sick. And guess what, guys? Turns out that speedrunner is a fucking wizard, because it's not super consistent, it's not super sick. For some reason, there were times when the enemies saw me and shot me immediately, and there was times when they didn't, and I don't really know what was different. I honestly couldn't answer it yet, but what I do know is that if you're quick here, guys, and you do it in a decisive order, you should be able to get this. So the first thing you do, you hit that gargoyle, you come over to this machine, and you start holding on this machine. Hold it to the complete end until Batman lets go, and if you don't, you'll have to do it again. And if you do this, Freeze will never be able to get you, because as you come off it, you need to start mashing roll. So mash evade, and then roll to the right. You roll all the way to the right, and then you hit that gargoyle. Now jump between 3 gargoyles so that everybody forgets where you are. And then now you need to go and hit the next one, which is behind us, just there. So I'm going to drop down here, and I'm going to start hitting this. At this point, if you get on this one, it seems to go correct every time when I tried it. It was the first one that seems a bit ambiguous. Sometimes they just see you for some reason. And then again, roll off this, roll across down here. As soon as the Icerit laser stops, stop rolling, and then use the gargoyles for the cover. So boom, first gargoyle, second gargoyle, third gargoyle. That's where we need to be, just down there. So come back on yourself, and then drop down and hold the button on this. And the moment you do this one, it triggers a cutscene and you get a checkpoint. This is the part I really did not like. This part I thought was terrible. But with that strategy, it goes really smooth. But just word of warning, guys, it is not as easy as that speedrunner makes it look. Sometimes you just get shot, so bear that in mind. And then this is the mandatory damage right here. You have to take damage breaking out of this, it seems like. And if you don't, I didn't tap fast enough. But I watched Godfather Dictator do this, because he has a no damage run of this as well. He's an amazing Arkham player. And he took damage too. And I'm telling you folks, if Godfather takes damage, it's probably mandatory. Because if you've ever wondered who inspired me to do no damage, it's him. And then on this section here, I didn't remember what that speedrunner did. So I ended up just fighting this in my way, which was, I'm going to charge up my Batarangs, and I'm going to break the icicles and let them land on Mr. Freeze. And the idea is very similar to the one in Arkham City. You have to take Freeze down with like a variety of different moves, but here, that variety of different moves can be the same move repeatedly, because it's kind of uninspired. And you can do, I think, great takedowns, you can do takedowns through walls, you might be able to do inverted takedowns, but the one that I'm going to get the most ammunition out of is I'm going to use these crystals on the roof here. So you'll notice when you're holding it, it tells you that somebody's beneath the stalactite, and when it does that, that's when you want to throw it. But you need to charge the Batarang, or you will not break them. They have to be heated first, which is kind of a cool mechanic, actually. And in the previous fight, if Mr. Freeze sees you on a gargoyle, he'll freeze the gargoyles, and then you can melt them with the heated Batarang. But it's one of the nice touches that this game has. And then all I'm going to do is stay defensive, wait for him to stand underneath those big glowing glyphs, and then drop the icicles on him. And that's pretty much going to be the end of the project, guys. It's going to take another 4 minutes because I'm garbage at this part of the fight. But it's pretty much been cold hard. And I am curious to see what people thought about this DLC. I remember not being interested in it because I didn't like the base game, and I thought the money that they wanted for this was a bit steep. Now I've played it, coming back to it, and it's been a considerable amount of time. We haven't had an Arkham for a while now, after Arkham Knight. I kind of think that this DLC is really cool. Oh damn, I hit that wall, that was a bad one. And I think it's cool because we don't really get DLC like this anymore. The era of getting fully fledged single player slicers, it's completely gone. It seems to be a thing of the past. Nowadays, we get these broken, ugly games that were sold to us with pristine, beautiful trailers, and then it seems like we spend at least 6 to 8 months waiting for them to do half the shit they promised originally. And that right there, I tried to do the smoke bomb takedown to test it on him, and he has a counter to that one apparently, so don't do that. But it wasn't the end of the world. You can tell that this was a one attempt, can't you? Which is quite lucky to get 1 attempts as well. And that's a straight lie, it wasn't 1 attempt, it was like a 3rd attempt. But the first 2 I took damage at the start, realised, and restarted to try and get it. But you get what I mean. I think as well here, if you time this right, you can hit him as he's getting up with the heated icicles. But you need to wait for him to recover, because if you do it too soon, you won't get credit for it. But you see, if he keeps talking and standing there, you can get a bunch of damage on him. And it just becomes about flying between gargoyles and dropping the ice on him. But for a little bit of a tidbit as well, give you some behind the scenes, because I know people like to know stuff like that. I recorded this project up to this fight before Elden Ring came out. I recorded it, I think it was February. Early February. This fight I recorded after Elden Ring. I had to come back to it and do it. And I don't know about you guys, but there's something really demoralizing about going back to a project you started doing months ago when you're completely cold and you're kind of in a different frame of mind. It's really frustrating, but I managed to get it done. And then this is the end of the fight. You come down here, you break the ice, and then you take down good old Mr. Freeze. So the only thing left to say, guys, is thank you for being here, thank you for watching, thank you for the support, and you take care now.